Hey guys, welcome to the Troy Gramling podcast, and we are once again into a new year. This is the 99th, or 99, or one less than 100,
or as most people say, 99
episode. 100th is coming up, and it's going to be a big deal.
Yes, I'm very excited about that.
Going to have a big party. But before we get to any of that, we mentioned it on the last podcast, or the one before that.
Yes.
But you did have a child.
I did.
So tell us the weights and the length and all that stuff.
7 pounds, 10 ounces is what he was at.
And we'll maybe in post we can throw up a few pictures.
Yes. Very cute. Baby Silas, boy, 7 pounds, 10 ounces.
Hold, you missed the most important part. What's his middle name?
Silas Dean Gramling.
Silas Dean Gramling.
Yes.
And why is that important?
Because your middle name is Dean.
That is right. My first grandchild with any part other than my last name.
Yes.
So.
Yes. But Silas Dean Gramling, 7 pounds, 10 ounces, 20 and a half inches, and he's growing. He was in the 70th percentile of height. He is now in the 80th percentile. So I'm hoping I'm going to have a tall kid. That's what I'm hoping for.
What's tall to you?
6 feet and over. Solid. That's a good height to be for a man. So right where I'm at, basically, is where I want him to be.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Does he keep you up at night or?
Yes. That is the only time he doesn't sleep is at night.
You got to retrain him.
Yeah.
You got to train him to be awake during the day and sleep at night.
Yeah. But the only way to do that is to keep him awake during the day.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't seem enjoyable. I'm not a great sleeper. So to be honest, it hasn't been that bad. I'm kind of accustomed to not sleeping a lot. So it really hasn't been too bad. Because he's not a crier. He's not screaming through the night.
He's just awake.
He's just awake.
Well, and then just 2 weeks later, your sister had a baby.
That she did.
And that was a little bit of a journey. It was kind of we were up at the hospital until like 5 a.m. with Silas, because kind of watching it progress. And then with Bailey, it was kind of the same thing, except for I got a text from your mom because Bailey was like at a 1. And I think you got to get like to a 10, something like that. And Bailey was at a 1. And she texts me and she says, something about the doctor, pray that she'll be a 10 and about to give birth. So I thought she was telling me, pray that when the doctor comes in, she'll be a 10 and she's about to give birth. What she was saying is like in 45 minutes, she went from a 1 to a 10, and she was saying
that's got to be a record.
She's a 10 and she's about to give birth.
It makes me wonder if that doctor who came in and said she was at a 1, if they knew what they were doing.
But they were afraid the doctor wasn't going to get there, and the doctor did, and the baby was born.
Yep.
And
6 pounds, 14 or 15 ounces,
something like
I believe.
that. Yeah.
And also 20 and a half inches, I believe.
Yeah, good memory.
Very, very cute.
Yes, a very cute little girl.
Big eyes.
She does have big, unlike me.
Yes. She did not get the Gramling eyes.
No, she's got big eyes, like her dad. And then, of course, Bailey had, that used to be called toxemia. What's it called today?
Post-clampsia, or pre-clampsia and post-clampsia.
And so her blood pressure spiked. So she had to stay in the hospital. And then she went to ICU, which was kind of scary.
And that's when I came in.
That's when you came in and lowered her blood pressure with your sweet
Cured her.
disposition.
And she will be getting a bill from me, 100%. And insurance won't cover it.
No, it was, and it's scary because they come in, they pad everything because they're like, she can have convulsions and a stroke and die. That's exactly what they said.
I feel like let's deal with that when we get there.
Yeah.
I don't need to know that going in.
No, and then
you know what I mean?
The next morning, get this, the next morning, the baby is released like at 6 a.m., 7 a.m., I don't know, something like that. But Bailey's in ICU and she's breastfeeding. So the hospital, this is the empathetic hospital, they had to take somebody out in a wheelchair. So they take Larry out in a wheelchair, carrying the baby. He has to leave the hospital. It's like kicking you out. He has to leave the hospital, turns around, walks back in, takes the baby up to the ICU waiting room because Bailey has to feed him. And then the nurses and the social worker up there is like, I can't believe you have this baby up here in the waiting room. There's so many bacteria and disease. It's like, well, what are you supposed to? It's crazy. Anyways, we made it through it all. They're all home and they're doing well. And we're going to have a big party on our 100th show.
Yes.
But what are we going to do on this one?
On this one?
This one right here. What are the folks at home about to experience?
Why don't you tell them?
All right, I will. You are about to experience our greatest hits for the last year. We've been on the air for, 98 episodes.
People are going to notice there was a change in the podcast.
Yes.
Before it was just you.
It was just me and it was around a table. And then now we're with this incredible setup here and all these incredible folks here. And in case you do not know, we're going to be celebrating with a live audience our 100th show.
100.
And so what we're going to do is, because we do on Sunday nights, we do what we call a live stream, our Sunday night live stream. We have a lot of fun and goof around and talk about what's going on in the culture. So we're going to do that to celebrate our 100th. And then we're going to premiere the 100th episode of the podcast. So it's going to be
very exciting.
It's going to be good. I hope you guys will join us. You can join us online, or if you're in person, be sure and come be a part of it. It's at 7 Bells at Potential Church in Cooper City, but it'll be online as well, of course. And it would really help us out as we go into this new year. So if you are listening, subscribe, leave a comment, because all those things help the algorithm, and the algorithm is king, but there's something else you can do, and that is to share it. Let somebody else in on all the fun. But for now, let's look and see what happened in 98 episodes. Check it out. Hey guys, welcome to the Troy Gramling podcast. This is our inaugural episode. I'm so glad you're here, and whatever platform you're listening on.
Some relationships do benefit from a little bit of distance, from just spreading out a little bit. And so I think even more so once Tyler did get married and moved out. Yeah.
So y'all been married for 8 years. That's long enough to be able to tell. How is your marriage, do you think, different today than it was that very first year?
I've got a great answer for this.
Oh gosh, here we go.
I think when we first got married, you're always trying to bring aspects of how you were raised or how you grew up or how you operate into that marriage.
Yeah.
And it takes a little bit of time to really build your own family. The Bible talks about, two become one flesh, and that takes time. That doesn't happen naturally or just, because there was a wedding ceremony. It takes intentionality and time. And
I think that's the first thing to realize, that, your dream did not come true. And especially if you've had parents that split up or divorced, it's happening to me as well. What did I do? What occurred? And you are left at a place of just wondering, and not me too, And but when I was walking through that time in my life, and just thinking back at it, first of all, I have to say God has been faithful. That even at times when I didn't understand what I was going through or even how to navigate, God remained faithful.
It's such a compliment. Like, we have people that go to school, and so they have to find a job in Orlando or wherever else, and they're like, we've gotten a couple texts actually from employees that are just like, I can't tell you like how lucky I feel to have worked at Cali now that I'm working here. And that's just the best compliment to us ever, because that's everything.
Exactly. And we'll see it. So we'll have people who have had jobs before that they just didn't like, they hated. They're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, I hate working. I hate going there. It's just a bad, toxic environment. And then they come to Cali and they're like, oh my gosh, this is what it could be like. This is amazing. And then you have the person who it's their first job. And so they don't know any different. So then they go to Cali. They're like, oh, this is what a normal job is like anywhere I go, right? And then they go to college and then they have a bad experience and then they text us. So it's interesting to see. We forget how young our employees are sometimes. We've been through all this ourselves, but we forget, we'll look at their birth dates when they apply and we're like, there's got to be a typo here.
Yeah.
Like, how are you not born in this century?
I know, when people are born in the 2000s, I'm scared. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Oh, it's insane. Yeah.
I used to teach at Aveda when I first moved to Florida, and I loved teaching people what I do. And so opening up a salon, gave me that opportunity to teach people and watch them grow, and maybe someday be able to do what I do, be an owner or
Yeah.
We sold a house to open main spot. We went from a nice house to a little tiny apartment. We are 2 daughters, and we have to we'll make it work.
Yeah, we downgrading our lifestyle. We're like, we have to make this work.
Yeah.
So
there was no plan B. It was it's time to burn the boats and not coming back. We're staying here. We have to jump in and go.
Yeah. Don't assume they know what I mean. Don't assume they know I want this. Don't assume they know I want that. Don't assume that we should go the extra mile for this client. Show them.
Yeah.
Show through example, show through verbal communication, and just communicate.
Yeah.
And the other thing is seek to understand before being understood.
Yeah.
I want to know, there were many times that I'm like, I did not communicate that, or I did not say that. And of course this happened. I dropped the ball there. Mm-hmm. And so that was a big one.
Yeah.
Seek to understand before being understood. And don't assume this person knows what I want.
Yeah.
We have a saying, we don't make people want our products. We make products people want. Can you wrap your mind around that, Troy?
I did. I had to think, but I could.
But so what that means, the reason I made that up, and I have a lot of little sayings like this, is because most people will make a mediocre product, right? They won't make a great product. And then they'll wrap marketing around it, but you have to continuously resell it. So if you make a product like Bang that people want, right, then you don't have to continuously remarket the same product, and your sales continue to increase. And so you make a great product first with all the functionality, science, taste, everything like that, and then you wrap marketing around that product. Same could be said as the church, is that, and we discussed this before, as you, like when I come to Potential Church, you're the best teacher in the country by far. I listen to every pastor.
Thank you.
And the music is off the charts. I'm like, what is this music? Why doesn't this church have tens of thousands of people in it? But you have to create a great product first. And then you do have to market to a degree in the church. And then when you get people in, hopefully they have the same experience we do and say, wow, that was amazing. I need to invite somebody to see what's going on in this church.
Yeah.
Testing my confidence.
I had a unique perspective too, even different from Amber, because I married the middle. So I already had 2 people go through the, trials and tribulations of that. So I was able to learn from example. So I remember when Carson and I were dating, we were probably maybe 6 months into dating, and Amber took me out to coffee, and she kind of laid down, hey, I can see that you guys really like each other. Here's what it looks like, which was really important, I think, to see. Almost like it was an exact perspective, because it was the woman marrying into the man in the family. So I was able to get a really clear perspective of what it looked like as a woman going into that family, and, just tips and tricks. But something that I learned personally was really the importance of your own personal influence. Having the Gramling name may look like something here at the church, but obviously I never had the Gramling name until 3 years ago. Yeah, so the influence that I have as Jess will continue on as Jess Gramling. So if my influence as Jess was not something good, or something that I, fought for and, got tips on and learned from and was humble in, then Jess Gramling doesn't mean anything either. So I kind of just really... I was able to reflect on that, with the perspective from others before me, and come into the marriage and the name Gramling with a good perspective on influence and the meaningfulness that this legacy has, the Gramling family.
Yeah, that's right. How do you deal with the people that help you do what you do when things don't go right?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm really laid back. Like, my countenance right now is the same on set, and probably to a fault, because there have been some times where I should have been like the pissed off photographer, but I was still like really gentle. And you do hear stories about photographers like throwing the camera, yelling at people. Like, there's nothing that makes me mad. I've had an assistant delete a whole shoot before.
Oh my goodness.
That I just did. Deleted, gone forever. That's when I should have lost my, But I didn't. I was nice, and probably the client, I don't think they used me again, because they're like, he should have been much angrier, But I'm chill, man. I'm super chill.
At home as well?
Yeah. I don't know why. I've just always been quiet and laid back. I I mean, of course, there are moments that, you know, I'm not going to allow. I'll be straight up. Like, adoption has been really hard. And so my son, it's no fault of his own, but he has trauma. And trauma can do some really bad things. And those bad things can send me to a place of anger that I didn't know I had in me, because I've never had a great upbringing. No trauma that I'm aware of in my life. No, I had great parents, godly parents, like beautiful upbringing. But yeah, sometimes, I can not be laid back. Thankfully, it's been a long time, but there were some moments early on where I was like, wow, adoption is no joke. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit, what are some of the keys? Somebody's out there either watching or listening, and in whatever area of ministry or business they're in or life, what are some of the things that have helped you to not settle and instead to push towards something different, something creative, something out of the ordinary?
Okay, and I am a guy that consumes most of your content, Troy. So from your podcast, your weekend teachings, I enjoy your wisdom even from afar. I'm glad technology allows me to get that. I was just listening to, and I don't even know if you remember when you just drop nuggets of wisdom, it's like, oh, that's good. I'm going to file that away. I remember in a staff meeting, you talked about at the time, you might have been the age I am now when I was on staff. If we do the math, it might be that might be about right. But you were just talking about, as you keep reading books and leadership books, you have to read to the very end to get something out of it. Whereas early on in ministry and leadership, you read the first chapter, and it's like, oh, I got a lot of work to do. And I didn't quite understand that sitting there, because everything was like amazing. I was just consuming so much, and it didn't take me very much time to figure out, to pull something out. Now I start to see what you mean. I've read it. Not every, but so many books on leadership and creativity that I got to discipline myself to stay to the end, because there's going to be one thing in there I can pull out and apply. And it's that first thing in creativity is be disciplined to stay through learning and picking up other people's ideas and being humble to learn from other people, never stop learning. And so I've enjoyed being able to continue to learn from you, and just I really enjoyed the Abraham Lincoln podcast. Seriously, what are you doing with your life if you're listening to this? Stop listening to this. Go back and listen to some of the other ones from Troy. He's killing it.
But no matter how you said it,
Right.
no matter how delicately you said it, how considerate you worded out, what terms you use, the point is that they hate the fact that you say there's hope in Christ to change your life. I mean, that was the end point. Like, you cannot offer salvation, because that would mean that people are perishing. And to state that publicly, it is considered a hate crime for everybody that lives in a lie, because you're challenging their worldview, you're challenging their lifestyle, you're challenging their culture,
See God working in your life. You see you've overcome some obstacles. And then I know you, actually here in South Florida, in this process, after being drafted, of course, you had a tragic event happen.
Absolutely. I definitely, want to get into it. I'm definitely grateful that story doesn't, hold me back to just being filled with trauma where, I can't even really talk about it. But I was here in South Florida visiting family, just going about my everyday life. And I'm all about transparency, so I can definitely say that there were times in my life that I hung around certain people that I wasn't always sure what they did in their spare time. Were they criminals? No, but they wasn't living the best. A car pulled up in the middle of the street, and a couple guys got out, and they shot over 35 bullets into the car that I sat in. And I initially remember hearing, the initial sound of the gunshots, and just kind of having the thought that, wow, here I am. I know I'm in a neighborhood that's not quite the best, but I don't expect in a million years to just be sitting here and it's a whole shootout going on in front of me, not knowing that these bullets were coming directly in the car that I sat in. So while I was conscious, I remember turning around to check on the children, and I had just been shot twice in the head, so I had a really big hole right over my right eyebrow here, and I got blood leaking, bone cartilage leaking, and my little cousin AJ, he's looking at me. I'm talking to him, but he's just looking at the hole, and his dad instructed him to, hurry up and call mom, let her know what happened. We gonna rush to the hospital. And he's on the phone yelling that Stedman is dead. But I was fine at the moment. Like I guess my adrenaline was running so high that I couldn't feel pain.
I remember I left West Virginia and I was like, Mom, like, I don't know what I'm gonna do because I just love that trip. Like I loved it. And she was like, well, you got one more and then, pray about it and make your decision. And I remember I took the Auburn trip and I fell in love with it. And for me, it was a win-win because I was like, okay, they have like the family relationship style team and it's also a big SEC school. So I was like, this is a mixture of the best of both worlds for me. I think this is where I'm going to go. And I remember on my last day, I was like 2 seconds away from shaking the coach's hand and giving him my verbal commitment, but something just told me not to do it. And I remember getting on my flight to go back home. And when I landed in Miami, I had a couple text messages from, like agents and things like that I was talking to represent me. And most of them were like, hey, wasn't Auburn one of your top 3 schools? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, well, all the coaches just got fired. The entire coaching staff just got fired.
I'll tell you a story. If I start crying, we're stopping it. I was at a fishing tournament. I do a Make-A-Wish fishing tournament every year with my family. And we donate a wish to a kid to, let them go do their thing, which they've reached out to me a couple times, and we might potentially move on one of those options that come up in the future for me to be their wish. But the kid, he was at the dock fishing, and I walked up. He didn't know it was my boat. We had just caught a bunch of like mahi, and we, filleted them up and did all that. And all the tarpon are right underneath the dock. And the kid heard my voice and started looking around. He didn't know where it was. And he looks up at me and he just stops. And just one tear. And he went through chemo. I told you.
There was an interview that I did with Selena Gomez. And when you do interviews, especially with big artists, they give you a list. They don't want to talk about this. Don't mention this. Don't do this. Don't do that. I guess because they don't want negative, press or whatever. And I'm not usually one who digs for negative stuff anyways. Right. But I said, okay, check. And it happened to be that I went live on Facebook at the same time. And it was just crazy because I was going to kind of try to look decent because I was going live on Facebook. It was pouring rain. My car had broken down. I was soaking wet from head to toe. And I had to do an interview. And I was like, oh my goodness, God help me. How am I going to do this? And they're going to see me looking crazy like this. I said, I don't care. I'm going to put the camera on. So I spoke to her. And one of the things that they said is don't mention anything about her relationship, because at the time, back in the day, she was supposedly dating an artist called The Weeknd. So I said, of course not. I won't. I follow the rules. I'm not going to, get an artist mad because it won't come back to your station. But her and I got into this conversation, and I guess she forgot that I'm interviewing her, and we're chit-chatting, and we started talking about her song, and she revealed that she was dating The Weeknd. And I didn't realize she did that until the end of the interview. I said, did she just say that? TMZ, the New York Press, E! Online, it went viral. And it was Selena Gomez breaking the news that she was dating him. And I was like, that's pretty cool. And I mean, I Googled my name a few times and it popped up. And I was like, that was awesome. And it was something I didn't expect to happen because they told me, number one, not to talk about it. But she kind of slipped up because she felt comfortable, And I thought that was a cool moment.
Yeah. And I remember calling my wife and going, I just met Joel Osteen. And I swear he wants to be my best friend. When you talk to him, he's so good. That's one thing I really learned from him is when he talks to you, you're the only person in the world. You're the only person in the room. There's could be 20 other people waiting, 30 people waiting to talk to him, and he is focused on you. and making that connection with you. And he is. You just feel like, I think he wants to be my best friend. You know,
very sincere, very authentic, and yet very strong about what he feels called to do.
Yeah,
you know, and that demands a lot of respect.
He is just a great person, as you know, your friends and people have their own thoughts. And someone said, "What's it like being friends with Joel Osteen?" And I said, you know, it's kind of like peeing on yourself. You know what I mean. I don't know what you mean. Like everyone can tell, but you're the only one that gets the warm feeling. You know, sorry, you can edit that out if you want. But
do you see some of the new folks who are coming onto the scene? I don't know how to say it, or becoming because a lot of folks have gone from, I don't know if you call it establishment media or, you know, the networks, to their own podcast and to their. Is that a pursuit or an avenue that a lot of people like try to get a name to then make their own money or their own?
I think there is still, you know, for NBC, we have decades of news history and credibility compared to a solo podcast with one person and maybe 2 or 3 producers.
Right.
I personally feel, how do I say this in the most politically correct way? I didn't think we were going down this way, Pastor Troy. But I do think everyone makes their decision on how they want to create content and what they want to say. We have standards and ethics that we follow at NBC National News.
Right.
And so I can't just freely give commentary. A podcast is very different than a newscast.
Right.
Like we have lawyers and we have writers and producers that double check our content. A podcast is different because a lot of it is opinion. A lot of it is kind of just commentary. It's a breakdown of the news for the day versus a newscast where we're bringing in experts and we're breaking down the stories in a journalistic way. I don't feel that podcasts are the same as newscast.
Right. Now, did you start the business because you loved it? Or did you start the business with another end in mind? Or, you know, sometimes people say, well, if you do what you love, you know, you never have to go to work a day in your life. Or is there a different motivation? Like, are you in a business you love, or do you love business, or what's your motivation?
Right, I love business. I just love being able to control my destiny. I couldn't imagine being in a job where I was getting a 1% raise every year for the next million years, right? Like I controlled my destiny, whether I was successful or whether I failed. So that alone, I love the game of business in itself. Like the Rolls Royce and the fancy stuff. I make videos all the time about like people get attracted to the rewards of entrepreneurship. But the reality is you have to just love what you're doing, and eventually those come. But most people jump into entrepreneurship. They want the fancy stuff right away. They don't get it. And then they get disappointed, then they quit.
Right. Reminding people that life is a life of seasons.
Yeah.
And you guys have come through an incredibly challenging season. And when you look back on that aspect of it, are there some things that... what are some of the things that you reflect on when you look back through the last season that you've been through?
Well, obviously, you know, I wouldn't have made the mistakes I made that, you know, contributed. But, you know, a lot of the attack Hillsong came on. Whether people believe it or not, it was basically demonic. I don't think the devil's too threatened by a big church, but he is threatened by influence. Because when the kingdom of God is gaining territory, he's losing territory. Right. And so, you know, it's amazing that the lies that have been told about me and about Hillsong Church, et cetera, and yet the people who came to Hillsong, apart from, you know, like every church would have, a small group of dissenters who have an axe to grind or a story to tell, and some of their stories I'm sure are valid. You know, I don't question that. But, yeah, it's the price of influence.
Where I can go in and I can find content from any pastor. I can find out how to be a Christian. I can find out how to defend my faith. I can listen to the gospel. I can listen to my favorite Bible stories come to life. We have the ESPN for sports. We have the worldwide digital destination for sports. Why don't we have the worldwide digital destination for Christians?
I'm going to start with this because this was a miracle for us. There was a man in our art department, Bill, who the second week of shooting, he was having some issues. He went to the doctor. He was diagnosed with cancer, serious. And he came back to the set, and he told Steven and I and a couple of other people, because he was so startled by it, we stopped and pulled everybody together and prayed over him. A few days later, when he went back for another hospital visit, the doctor scans him, is a little confused. He says, he didn't say, where is the cancer? But he says, I don't see this moving or looking like it's going to happen the way that it normally does. And then as time went by, Bill kept coming to set and working as best he could. Some days he would have to be gone, but throughout the course of the movie, he didn't get worse. He started getting better. And then I talked to him months later. We shot this in the summer of last year. Talked to him months later, and he calls me and he says, Alex, I am in full remission.
Okay, understanding. I didn't start my throwing program where I usually did. I started it later. We rehabbed some of the injuries, and then I just got into camp. And as a competitor, I'm in the camp. They're like, hey, let's use camp to get ready. And for me, I've always come into camp like I am ready. I'm here, and the conversation that off season was always like, hey, we need to make sure you make it through the whole year next year. Like, it's okay if you start a little slower. It's okay if you're not fighting for a spot. And my competitive nature and my hunger needs to always be, I'm fighting for a spot. And I allowed that to switch my mindset a little bit. And I kind of lost that tiger, and I went into spring training and I was just behind. My strength numbers were just behind. My arm wasn't where I needed it to be. And then you start spring training games and your competitive nature is not, oh, well, it's a process. I got to get my stuff back. No, you're trying to win a game. Right. Like, even if it doesn't matter, I don't want this guy to beat me, or you're facing a AAA prospect. Right. I want to beat that guy.
What are some of the sacrifices, not just, that you've seen, you maybe even had to make along the way to be able to continue to succeed?
There's definitely that sacrifice from, sometimes I may have to miss a family event, or like during the holiday season, like I have a birthday. I know I'm going to have one weekend, and I share it with my son's birthday, so he gets it. So I think when you surround yourself with like people that understand that, it's not taken negatively. I think the opportunity that it does provide on the flip side, it allows us, a special zip code. It allows us a special lifestyle. It allows us things that the sacrifice pays off, and the more you do and you can get rewarded at work, the more we can do for others, quite honestly. So that's the way it's like this big circle of, I'm going to sacrifice something so that I can have more of something else that's going to help whoever I'm trying to help, but it does require, I think anything that we are passionate about and that we love requires time in any field. We have friends that are authors and doctors and, all these other fields, and they work equally as hard. But I don't know anyone that's very successful or achieved a dream that just really didn't put in time and dedication to what they're doing.
Well, guys, thanks so much for joining us. Again, don't forget to share, to subscribe, to comment. Let us know which was your favorite episode. And if you haven't watched them all, there's still time. What do you call that when you just watch a bunch in a row?
Binge.
You could binge on the podcast.
That you could.
And you'd be a much wiser person.
You might pass out from all the wisdom.
That's just your head
overflowing.
You just watch your head grow.
Exactly.
Wow. Exactly. You know what? I'm thinking we need to play it at night for Silas and Dove.
It's like some parents play Mozart for their kid to make them smart.
We'll play our podcast.
There we go. I like that.
Hey, what was your favorite episode?
Yes. I do think it's a little inspiring. 100 episodes.
Yes, it is. I mean, consistency, and that's
Absolutely.
a key to success along the way. My favorite was the guy from, I think it was prayer.com.
Yes. Yeah, no, he was great.
Made all the apps.
He was great. I loved the director from The Forged movie.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah,
he was
that
very
was good too.
Mm-hmm.
We got to talk to a lot of interesting people, app creators, movie producers, even managers at department stores.
Architects.
Yeah. Bakers, chefs. Pretty cool. Doctors, physicians. Pretty cool deal. It's been a lot of fun, but it's going to get even better in this new year. Be sure and check out our 100th show. It is with You'll have to come and find out. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. And the big celebration party on Sunday night at 7 p.m. What is the date? Sunday night, what is that? The 26th of January. It's going to be a great year. I hope you can stay awake for the journey.
Yes.
We'll see you next time on the Troy Gramling podcast. Thanks for tuning in and have a great day.